Imagine waking up every single day to build someone else's dream. On today's episode of Fishing for a Living, episode 1, I'm your host and your guest. Before we talk to anyone else, I wanted to start here with my story. Because this show, it ain't about famous people. It ain't about people that you might know or you might not know. It's about freedom. The freedom to fish when you want, the freedom to work when you want, the freedom to chase a dream, the freedom to build a life that's worth living, because we've only got one of them. Today we're going to hit on a couple of things. My background in fishing, my career, why I started this podcast, Fishing for a Living, why I started the Kurrent, where this dream, this idea came from, my leap from my corporate marketing career, and what it takes to build a life around fishing, freedom, and purpose. So let's get into it. And I want to start off with something that hopefully everyone here has a passion for, and that's fishing. My journey in fishing started, as long ago as you could imagine. I'm 34 years old today, so I can honestly say that I have memories that go back 31 years. My personal first memory of fishing was at Disney World. We used to go to Disney most years. My dad had an RV where he, myself, my mom, we would take it up to I think it was the Wilderness Lodge, one of the campgrounds up there. And one of the times that we went, it was just me and my dad. And we had brought our fishing rods because that was just a thing that my dad also did, same as me. You bring a fishing rod wherever you go because you never know what brewery might have a lake in it, what restaurant there might be a lake in it, what Walmart there might be a pond behind it, so on and so forth, obviously. And I had my Snoopy pole with me, my little Zebco button cast Snoopy rod. And like most toddlers, I know now from experience, sometimes they wake up and they get into some trouble. And the trouble on that day, for me, was to wrap my dad in the fishing line from my Snoopy rod. And I essentially wrapped his whole body with the fishing line before he woke up. There was a lure attached to it, and that lure did end up hooking him once he woke up. And the funny thing is, now I look back on a memory like that and understand why I did it, because now I have a toddler that's very curious, thinks he's super funny, which he is very funny. Sometimes the joke's on you, so it's hard to laugh in the moment. But that's probably my first super vivid fishing memory, wrapping my dad up in fishing line when I was 3 years old. A lot more happened as a kid. My parents always tell this story, or my dad does specifically, where we lived in a little townhouse community in South Florida where I grew up. And there was a little pond/lake that was in our neighborhood. And we'd go there all the time to feed the ducks, fish in the pond. There were, as most lakes and ponds in South Florida, bass in it, peacock bass, largemouth, brim, bluegill, so on and so forth. And the first bass that I caught, my dad tells this story all the time, with that same Snoopy rod, I never touched the reel handle and pulled that fish straight up on shore. And that bass had no chance of getting off because I never let slack in the line. I ran as fast as I could and brought up what I've heard is a 3-pounder for my first bass. So we've been catching 3-pounders ever since. We've caught some bigger fish in between, but that's kind of the intro, the start to my fishing journey. Fishing has just always been in my life. From there, my uncle, he owned a home in the Florida Keys. They had lived there for a long time. He worked for Bell South, which was a computer company back before computers were a huge thing. And they lived down there because he worked for the Bell South down there. And my dad and I would go down there. My family and I would always go down there. He had lived there since the early 80s. My grandfather had also lived in the Keys. He actually owned a tackle shop or a bait shop called Max Bait and Tackle. Got some photos, probably one right here, of that back in the day. And so my dad grew up also going to the Keys, and my uncle, my dad, my mom also, they all grew up in Miami, Florida. So I'm a second generation South Floridian. And so I've got a lot of memories of going down to the Keys. And my dad was just obsessed with fishing as a kid, or as a kid himself, and then obsessed in the same age period as I am before that. So he's really the one that passed down my fishing obsession. So down in the Keys, my dad is just a wild man, or he was a wild man back in the day. The dude would target permit on the flats via a jet ski. I'm hoping that I can point at a photo right here of him on a jet ski with a giant permit on the back of it, fishing the flats. We would go out and target bonefish, permit, tarpon, snook, redfish, all the above in the Keys that you could find. And all we had to fish from was an 18-foot Pro Sport flats boat. And we would also take that thing offshore and catch sailfish, dolphin, wahoo, kingfish, you name it, in this little 18-foot flats boat with a 115 Yamaha on the back of it. So my experience went from flats fishing to fishing the wrecks for snapper, grouper, whatever bit on drop down some bait and call it a day, all the way out to trolling the deep water. And another uncle of mine, he's not necessarily an uncle, but I call him an uncle, not blood, but grew up with them. He always had a boat, a sport fishing boat, 28-foot blackfin, I think was the one that he had when I was younger, in that kind of early stage. And we would fish with him in the Keys a ton as well. So experience kind of bounced from offshore, inshore, but also we loved going to like Holiday Park or Sawgrass Park down in South Florida, closer to where we lived. And we were a part of the Miami Sport Fishing Club. That was one of the earliest fishing clubs in South Florida. I believe one of the earliest fishing clubs in the country, saltwater specific. And my dad had, in his probably late 20s, early 30s, done a bunch of tournaments with them. And they were all Flamingo or Everglades National Park related. So he got huge into fishing for snook, redfish, trout, tarpon, all on artificial for the most part. And the guy, I can see his tackle box now in my head. He was obsessed with, if anyone knows, the Bango lures. That is essentially like a prop bait with a bill on it. Looks like a jerk bait, but props on either side. The dude would tweak, tune, make those things do exactly what he wanted with lead sticks, sticky weights on the bottoms of them. He's got a mess of them. But that's kind of how he was targeting those snook. We'd fish, Everglades National Park out of Flamingo my whole growing up period, till I was in my teens. That is probably, in general, one of my favorite places to fish in the world. Only place, fun fact, in the world where alligators and crocodiles coexist. You can fish the front side of Flamingo or the back side, so back country, or the open side to the Gulf. And when you put in at Flamingo, there's literally just a lock in between the two where you put in on the back country side or you put in on the front side. So really a unique, super unique growing up and ability to target fish in so many different ways for me. And that's kind of how I've continued my fishing journey. I've always been obsessed with the process, the catch, the adventure, the camping multiple days in a row in Flamingo kind of brought that up into me. One of the trips that I remember super vividly is a place called the Cane Patch, way out in Flamingo. It's probably 40 miles from the boat ramp. You got to run, run, run to get there. And you go way up into the back country, so far that there are tilapia and bass in there coexisting with redfish, snook, tarpon, all the fish that can kind of go both fresh and salt. And we camped over there for, I want to say it was 2 nights. We brought all of our stuff in. Boat was just absolutely covered in coolers, camping gear, so on. You couldn't fish on the way there because there was just so much stuff. And I can remember so vividly, and this happened in Everglades National Park all the time too, like in the actual campground at ENP. The raccoons were insane. These raccoons were smarter than any dog, smarter than a lot of people probably. These things would open your coolers with their hands. I'm talking like you got a Yeti cooler, you've got to actually like strap it down because these little bastards would open it up and ransack all your food. And when you're 40 miles away from civilization, that's a half a day ride to get back, and you got gas tanks to get back, but you're only preparing for fuel for their back and then running around a little bit while you're out there. So these little bastards ended up getting into our food the first night. Thankfully, we caught some redfish the first day, so we were able to salvage the food that we had lost. Cooked redfish on the half shelf. My first time ever having it was out there over top of a campfire. Probably one of the best ways to eat redfish that I've ever had. You're literally just picking the fish off of the scales or off of the fillet. I personally love redfish. Such a tasty fish to eat. So that's a bit of the early stage of my fishing passion, purpose, whatever you want to call it, obsession, addiction. And once I kind of got a little bit solo, my parents separated when I was pretty young at, I want to say I was 5 or 6. I had lived with my mom for most of my adult or teen, well, from 6 to leaving home. I lived with my mom for about 85% of the time. We lived in South Florida that whole time, and in middle school I started to get obsessed with fishing solo, and I started taking my bike to all these little canals and ponds that were around the area that we lived in, Wellington, Florida. That was most of middle school and the first year of high school for me. And I would get obsessed with fishing for bass in this little canal system that they had in Wellington. And that was kind of how I started to figure out bass. I wasn't like super technique specific. There wasn't social media back then. There wasn't YouTube, all this stuff where you can get information with the snap of your fingers. But I was figuring it out. I wasn't going to tackle shops all the time, talking with old heads, but I had some previous knowledge and was able to start figuring these fish out without a boat, just a bike, just my feet, and walking the banks of these canals. So that was really the start of my obsession with bass. Fast forward to high school, and I purchased my first kayak. That was I graduated high school in 2009. I want to say I bought my first kayak in 06 or 07, and it was an Emotion. I don't remember the model name, something Angler. It was a fishing specific kayak. It had 2 rod holders, a little drop-in seat. It was a sit on top, a really efficient kayak. Like it worked for exactly what I needed it for. And so I had a car at age 16. I upgraded my car to a truck. My dad let me buy his old truck when I was 17. And that kind of opened the the narrative for my fishing story. I had been obsessed with bass, like I mentioned, but I had moved to Jupiter, Florida in 2007, 2006 or 7. Yeah, it was 2006. And that opened this can of worms for my new obsession, which was snook. Snook became the light of my life, catching them on a fly rod, catching them on gear, on bait, so on and so forth. And that kayak opened up a whole new realm for me. I was then able to go and really dial in this area called Riverside Park, or Riverfront Park, sorry. That's in Loxahatchee, or Jupiter Farms, but on the Loxahatchee River. And you can float that all the way from the entrance or the start of the park, Riverside? You'll have to fact check me on that. I'll put the Google Maps to that place here. But you could float that all the way, little skinny river, almost looks like you're fishing for trout, except there's no up, down, no elevation. It's definitely a lot more mossy, cypress trees, little corners, bends, and there's alligators. But this place was filled with a lot of fish that can go fresh and salt. Way up there, it's only bass, but as you start getting towards the Loxahatchee River, you get into snook. You get into tarpon. Sometimes you can tussle with a redfish. There are sometimes snapper, mangrove snapper back there. So the area that I focused in on really hard was that park. And I would float it all the way from the top of the park down to as far as I could to where it opened up and would paddle back up. When I had a friend with me, I was able to do shuttles where we would drop one truck up at the top, drop one at the bottom, which was Jonathan Dickinson Park, and that's actually the Loxahatchee River. And that float was an 8 to 10 hour float. It was a long day. I don't know how many miles, but that really started to open some things up when I found my community of other fishermen that really like to do that exploration style stuff. And snook to me have always been this creature that I absolutely love. The places that they live in are pretty. The way that they eat are really cool. I mean, and they get pretty damn big. You know, a 40 plus inch snook. I'm not going to say it's uncommon, but there's potential for a 40-inch snook in Jupiter, Florida quite often. You could set yourself up in front of one of those and catch it on artificial pretty frequently. And cool fact about snook in Jupiter, at least, there are multiple species. So I started to get obsessed with fishing dock lights at night around Jupiter, and a lot of those fish, both in Riverbend, that's the park, it's Riverbend Park. Both of the fish in Riverbend and in the Loxahatchee that would be on those dock lights were multiple species of snook. So you have the common snook. You also have a fat snook, a sword spine snook. I think there's one other, but I was able to catch all of them. And they were all very unique in their own way. The sword spine, the fin on the bottom was super long. The fat snook was way fatter, but typically anything other than the common snook were a lot smaller, but really just unique and cool to the area. And that's something that I personally love, is uniqueness of fish and uniqueness of ways that they are targeted, or I can target them, because I personally am not just a dedicated bass angler. I love to fish all types of fish, for all types of fish. My current obsession is bass tournament angling, or bass tournament fishing. But I've had years where, and we can fast forward now to where I'd only fly fish. Right after high school, I was able to upgrade my boat setup. Nothing fancy, nothing expensive, but something that was really common to use down in the Everglades, in South Florida, and a lot of people across Florida have probably seen these, but it's a flat back canoe called a Gheenoe, Gheenoe. I purchased a Gnu Classic, I want to say, photo right here, with a it's either a 9.9 or an 8 horsepower Yamaha two stroke. That thing ran like an absolute top. But that really started to open the water for me. I was able to start going up north a little bit to the St. Lucie area, up to Sebastian, up to the Indian River Lagoon, down south. Fished a lot in the Miami canals by the airport lakes, where I was able to target things like the peacock bass, the clown knifefish, really some unique species down there. And that was super fun. But typically, I was almost always fishing with a fly rod, probably a year or so after high school until I'd say 5 or 6 years ago, maybe even less. But I got super obsessed, super involved in the community of fly fishing. I have more fly rods than I'd like to admit, more fly reels, especially from a monetary value, than I'd like to admit. But that was my vice for quite a while. And after high school, I also decided to skip college. So now I'd love to intertwine a bit of my background in marketing or my career into fishing. After high school, I decided I'm going to try college. I wanted to be a firefighter like my dad was. And I thought that that would allow me to chase my dream, which my dream from an early age, probably teen years, was to be a fishing guide in the Everglades or in South Florida somewhere. And I thought that because my dad did this, firefighters work 24 on, 48 off in South Florida, that I could chase that passion where fishing was supplemental to my firefighting career. But I found out pretty quickly that blood, seeing kids get hurt, dealing with just rude, mean, nasty people, it wasn't for me. So my career took me to working in marinas and then building relationships with some of the folks that owned the larger boats and working on, after that, sport fishing boats and motor yachts. So from the age of 20 until 23, I had a career in as a mate on sport fishing boats and motor yachts. I was able to travel around the Caribbean, fish offshore, fish flats for bonefish, permit, tarpon, in the Bahamas, in the Keys, so on and so forth. Wherever we traveled, I was there as the mate. Sometimes I was running our sport fishing boat, depending on which boat. My first boat right here, that is WOW, W-O-W. It's a 110-foot burger, and that boat we traveled basically all the time. We'd spend months on Andros Island, in the Exumas, typically anchored up with our 40-foot Cabo on the hip, and we would do day trips where we were going out to catch snapper, to troll for dolphin, wahoo, marlin. But it was a really cool time in my life, and it taught me a ton about fishing, but also about how to grow up. I was on my own there. I didn't have a college experience where there was this big community around me. I kind of had to just figure it out. And I grew up really quick. That was a cool period of my life, but I found out pretty fast in that 3 years that if you're traveling often, if you're away from home a ton, building relationships with people, having friends, it's really tough. Like, you're confined to a 100+ foot boat for a while, and while it sounds like I'm complaining about that, I can fully say I'm grateful for the opportunity, but I wanted to eventually get married, have kids, have a house, settle down and have some roots somewhere. And one of the boats that I had worked on was over in California. So I said, screw it. I'm going to book a one-way trip to California, and I'm going to work on this boat that is going up to San Francisco and would be traveling up and down the west coast of the U.S. So I met that boat in Mexico after it got off of a large container ship or a big ship that transports boats through the Panama Canal and help transport that boat from there to San Diego, where we put it into the shipyard and we worked on it for its yearly maintenance, and then finally traveled up the coast, hit Monterey, and then landed finally in San Francisco at our final destination, or at least our hub. And that's kind of where my marketing career finally started, where I basically jumped ship after about a year. So after about a year of working on that boat, I realized I was traveling a lot, and my wife will tell you this, but we met before I started working on that boat, about 3 weeks before, and this opportunity just happenstance came up as she was also moving to San Francisco. She'll tell everyone that I followed her to San Francisco, that the reason I took that job on that boat was because she was going, but there's a little bit of truth there. But this was probably the coolest opportunity from a career perspective that I've had, and the luckiest thing, if you want to call it luck, that has presented itself to me. This opportunity that I decided to take a risk on, that I decided to pursue. I went all in. I bought a one-way ticket, went to California, worked on this boat, and about a year after that, I literally jumped ship. I decided it was time for me to take a different path in my career. And something that I had always loved to do was take photos and tell stories. And I had found that out, like really found my passion while I was on a couple of different boats. I'd always brought a GoPro with me because I loved recording these little videos. And mind you, this is back like 2010 was probably my first boat that I worked on. And 2010 or 2010 or 11. And that was one of the first years that I actually created a YouTube video. I believe it was called Ja Jupiter. And I've been trying really hard to find that thing on YouTube. I actually uploaded it there. That was my first video, and I can't seem to find it. I did use some copyrighted music, so maybe they took it down eventually. But that was my first intro into content creation. That's almost 15 years ago now. And I just found this little obsession with storytelling, with photography, video, and having fun with it. Like that was really like recording these memories, sharing them with people, using it as this kind of digital journal for me, really sparked this itch that I had of creativity. And when I jumped ship, I was lucky enough to have worked at a startup. It was a manufacturer of paddle boards and skateboards, where they gave me an opportunity to run all of their marketing. This was a huge task for someone that had basically never done like real marketing before, but I jumped headfirst in. Did all of their photography, ran their events. We did a lot of little pop-up events because it was a direct-to-consumer brand where we had to get people onto a paddleboard for them to actually buy, because it was a $1,500 to $2,500 investment that people were making. And I think we all know it's hard to pull the trigger on an investment that big if you've never touched, felt, or seen something in real life. So I was involved with the process of really building this brand from start to eventually its finish. And I loved every second of it. From there, I had a really cool opportunity because of a friend, because of relationships that I had built, to work at Facebook. I worked on a team called Product Data Integrity, where we would look at large sets of data and information that was coming into Facebook based on search queries. So think of you typing in Kyle McCann on, and that's my name, FYI, I'm Kyle McCann, the founder of the Kurrent supply of fishing for a living. If you typed in my name and you got a result back that was correct or incorrect, we were looking at all of that information to ensure that this algorithm or these strings of code that people would put into the engineers, the product managers, that they would put into the people, places, and things, that is the team and the product, that those were working correctly. We would rate, we would label, and we would evaluate these data sets and then give our findings back to the product managers, the engineers, to ensure that if it was working, we kept it going. If it wasn't working, these were the changes that we would make. And that part of my career was super interesting. I got to see corporate America, a campus like Facebook that was just ridiculous. My seat was actually, or my desk was actually like 200 feet away from the wood shop. During that time, I spent probably an hour to 2 hours per day in the wood shop. This is the first fly fishing net that I created within that. In that wood shop, I think I made probably 4 or 5 of them while I was there. Really cool, heating, bending, wood. Did a couple of other really fun projects. I made a bunch of people some laptop stands, but got super into woodworking. I mean, we're talking like this place had restaurants. I played basketball every other day. I was on a flag football team. Like, they never wanted you to leave, and it was great. Honestly, I loved it. But I realized the work that I was doing wasn't necessarily something I wanted to do forever. So someone actually reached out to me from Twitter. There was a new team that they were sparking up that needed to sell advertisers that were small to medium-sized businesses. And when we're talking about small to medium size, some of my book of business were car companies. As an example, these are not small to medium businesses, but they considered them SMBs if they spent under a certain amount of dollars on Twitter ads. And our goal was to manage 50 to 100 clients that were Twitter advertisers either now or in the past, and get them to continue using Twitter ads, evaluate how they were using them, evaluate how they could better use them, and how they could spend more and get more profit from the product. So that really sparked my interest in advertising, digital marketing, blurring the lines of brand marketing and digital or paid marketing. And I was one of the first employees on that smaller team, which was kind of a test originally. And after I left Twitter, that team actually grew and grew and grew. And I don't know if it's still there because now it's called X. As everyone knows, Twitter is not Twitter anymore, but that is back 2016. And after that, because of a And after that, because of a relationship that I had stuck with, had kept like fresh and warm, kept in communication with these folks from the paddleboard company that I had worked with, the company, we had advertised with a magazine called Sup the Mag. This was the preeminent stand-up paddleboarding magazine in the country, publication. It was digital, it was print, so on. I had placed an ad buy with them when I worked at the paddleboard company. I'd met quite a few people while I was there, was part of a bigger event that they had and met a lot of people. And again, kept that relationship warm, stayed in contact. And that company was part of a larger company called the Enthusiast Network, which was home to Transworld Skate, Transworld Snow, Transworld Moto, Surfer, Powder, a bunch of these action sports and outdoor magazines and publications. They were looking for someone that really understood social media inside and out, and that was something that I had experience with. I'd worked at these big companies at Twitter, Facebook. I had run marketing for this startup, and I just so happened to know someone there. So I got the job. I landed the job. And from San Francisco, that's where I lived after jumping ship. I moved down to Carlsbad, California, which is in Southern California, for that job. And that job was my intro into the outdoor industry. So mid 2016, probably late 2017. I don't know the exact timeline that happened. But I spent about 2.5 years there as the social strategy manager, eventually getting to digital strategy manager by the time I was heading out. But my role was essentially to ensure that everyone under this big media group, there were 13 different publications. I mentioned most of them or a lot of them were using social to the best of their capabilities. So I would help them with strategic initiatives to ensure that they were posting correctly, posting the right content, ensuring that they were utilizing data. And then also, this was the bigger, broader goal of mine because obviously you need to support revenue at every company you work at. I was essentially the first talking point to any advertiser. And the way a publication works, the way my business will work and is working now, is that media doesn't just make money from consumers. Media has to have sponsorship. And just like with the Enthusiast Network, we would sell in social media to, as an example, I was part of a big media buy with Visit Montana, a big media buy with Lululemon for men. When they originally launched, they launched a very large and robust campaign through Surfer Magazine, through Bike Magazine, and I believe Powder was the other one. But we built out this massive strategy to target the action sports and outdoor consumer. So I helped them with really getting the biggest and best value out of social media, whether that was organic or paid social, for their ad buy that they did with those media brands or those publications. Really an awesome experience. My desk was literally on the other side of a skate park. So if you've ever seen videos from Transworld Skate and repetitively saw the skate park that would just show up again and again, it was probably our office, and that was the skate park that was literally right behind my desk. I skated every single day for at least 10 minutes a day. Coolest experience, like awesome people that I worked with, and really got my foot in the door in the outdoor industry. From there, headhunted by a company called Canyon Bicycles to help them with getting their foot in the door into the United States market. Canyon is a German bike manufacturer. They're direct to consumer only and had really taken over the market and started the direct to consumer trend in the bike industry, but knew that there was this huge value of offering bikes in the United States. But what they didn't have is someone that really understood digital marketing, social marketing, so on and so forth in the US. So my goal was to start as a sole contributor. I was the only person on the digital side when I first started. They were about 6 months into their getting their foot in the door in the US market, and I grew our digital ad spend, our social, our event, and how that events, plural, how that connected to the digital space, how we built the customer journeys. So from you being interested to you wanting to try a bike out, or to you wanting to buy a bike, to you wanting to buy another bike, that was all of the things that I had worked on, and grew the team from just myself doing all this solo with some agency involvement to a team of 3. And that was probably the coolest experience on the brand side. So went from publishing to brand side, stayed there for about 2.5 years. And during that time, I was in Carlsbad, as I mentioned, California. At the end of my tenure there, I myself and my wife, wasn't my wife at the time, but my girlfriend, moved from Oceanside. We lived in Oceanside, California, to back to the East Coast, eventually to Virginia. Between that time, I kind of skipped over some things, but I had the opportunity to be the digital editor at Kayak Fish Magazine. If anyone knows OG Kayak Fish Magazine, I did all of our social, published a bunch of articles online, worked with advertisers, all while I was doing my full-time job. And that was my actual intro into tournament bass fishing, but from a kayak. I reviewed the first Hobie Compass pedal drive, the first Old Town 10.5 PDL. It was a pretty cool experience. That was the first time where I was really able to draw the line of my passion of fishing with career and work. And I took that opportunity and ran with it. I was managing our social, got obsessed with kayak fishing again. Caught some yellowtail offshore out of La Jolla, fished some bass tournaments on El Cap, on Lake Hodges, DVL, all those SoCal lakes that a lot of people probably are buzzing in their ear right now if you live in Southern California. And started to get back heavily into fishing. I never really lost my fishing obsession. When I lived in California, I was still fly fishing a lot, driving up to the Eastern Sierras a ton to go fish places like the Owens River, Crowley Lake, Hot Creek, all those kind of east side of the Sierra Mountain range, and then down in the Kern River Valley. Fished a ton fly fished for trout a ton. Even knocked off a bucket list trout while I lived there, the golden trout. That is the official state fish of California. Photo right here. Probably the most beautiful fish that I have ever caught. But that was kind of my obsession, where I continued to drag that fly fishing love. But then finally, right before we were about to move, as I was getting back into the kayak fishing realm, bass started to take over in my brain again, and bass tournament fishing started to really just grind my gears, and not in a bad way, but really started to take hold of what I wanted to do. And I fished with, shout out, the Southern California Kayak Anglers, SCKA. Really a fun group of guys. Steve, I don't know how he says his last name, Buchner. Really a really cool dude. I'm still in contact with him. Hopefully he's watching this. But he helped run a lot of those events. I don't know if he's on the board or like president of it, but dude is just a hammer from a kayak. But a lot of those guys, really serious fishermen, and learned a lot from them from a kayak bass tournament perspective. So fast forward again, we moved from California to the East Coast. We wanted to check out a bunch of different places, bigger cities where this was during COVID. If we had lost our jobs, we were still able to get another job because we were in a hub, per se. My wife is originally from Virginia. I'm from Florida. We wanted to be closer back to our family. So we checked out a few places. We went to Asheville. We went to Chattanooga. We had on the list Charlotte, Raleigh, Charleston, Wilmington, and Richmond, Virginia. We had stopped in Richmond, Virginia. We rented a short-term rental to check it out. And it just so happened that it was about a block away from the river, and that Airbnb was a place that we ended up staying for about 2 months because it was just this ideal place. We fell in love with Richmond, and after visiting Asheville and Chattanooga, we had planned to go to those other places, but we never left Richmond. Pretty quickly thereafter, we bought a house. I proposed to my wife the day that we closed on our house. I got married to my wife. We have a kid now. We have another kid on the way. Story goes on. But while I was in Virginia, still working for Canyon, got headhunted to work at what I thought was going to be my end all be all job, Smith Optics. They covered the gambit of products that I absolutely love. I had been a customer of theirs for as long as I can remember. I've always been obsessed with Smith sunglasses. The Chroma Pop lenses are like, bar none from my POV, best of the best. Worn their bike helmets my entire cycling career. Worn their snow goggles when I worked at the Enthusiast Network. It was my first pair of snow goggles I bought. So they had the full range of snow, bike, fish, surf, and the culture that I thought that I would have been obsessed with. My task there was to take them from being a traditional outdoor industry brand, where basically all of their product sales come through a local retailer or a big box retailer. Think of, big fishing company, online retailer, or a backcountry.com, or, your mom and pop snow shop or bike shop or fishing shop that has this big glass case of Smith sunglasses. That is your traditional way of selling products in the outdoor industry. You do it through a retailer. But what they had found out really quickly during the pandemic was direct to consumer was a huge untapped market, and could bring them a lot more profit than selling through a retailer. So what they brought me on to do was to essentially take their social, their paid media strategy, all of the digital marketing side from, about 10% of their spend, their marketing spend, to about 40% of their marketing spend. So I was able to help them within a year scale massively their media budget, their social strategy, how they worked with athletes from a digital media perspective. Really an eye-opening experience for me. But during that time, I was having a child at the end of my tenure, and they had some policies at the corporate level that didn't necessarily align to how I thought parents should be treated when they're having children. So I took my paternity leave, which I actually had to use FMLA for, which actually I didn't even get to use FMLA because I wasn't there for an entire year. Family Medical Leave Act, which essentially makes it so you can take off work without getting fired. You got to support your partner when you're having a kid. So I thankfully worked for a company that was in Oregon. They have OFLA, which allowed me to, with 6 months of tenure, do the same thing that FMLA would do, which was take 2 weeks off so that I could be with my wife, help her during this time, or we had just had a child. After I came back, I'd use like another week of PTO. I said, you know what, guys, I don't think this is right for me. And I'm, as you could probably hear, a very morally standarded person. I believe there's right, there's wrong. There are some very nuanced topics in life, but the right to support your family during and bringing a new human into this world, to me, there's no blur there. You got to give your employees the time. And if I ever have employees with the Kurrent, with Fishing for a Living, with this whole crazy dream that I have, you can bet your ass and mark these words that they will have the time to support their families. They will have work-life balance. They will be paid a healthy salary that they can make a living off of. I will never hire someone if I can't afford to hire them, if I can't give them the career that they want to give. So if anyone wants to work for the Kurrent, whenever we blow up and this dream comes to a reality and I actually make it big, just know you will be part of a family. I take that very, very seriously. Quick interruption. This may not happen in every episode, but I want to do this fun segment moving forward, and it is Questions from my wife. Ideally, I want to get some questions from every guest's significant other or from a friend of theirs, from a spouse or a family member, so that you can get a little personal side of me. Yes, we've been pretty personal. I've shared some interesting stuff with y'all, but I've actually not looked at a single one of these questions. I honestly have no idea what any of these questions are. I asked my wife the other day, I sent her a text. I said, "Hey, can you think of 5 to 10 questions that are fishing, life, relationship, anything related, and put them on a couple of different flashcards?" And she made these last night. She put them on my desk face down with this one above it, the questions from my wife. And we're going to answer these with you guys. You're seeing these first, and this is going to be a quick lightning round. Honestly, this question's not a huge surprise to me. What's your favorite thing about your wife? I'm going to make my wife smile by saying this, but I love that my wife is hilarious. She is funny as hell. Her humor is an acquired taste sometimes. She likes funny movies. Christopher Guest is one of her favorite producers, directors, whatever he is. There's a movie called Waiting for Guffman that he created. Best in show about the dog show, like the Westminster Dog Show is literally what it's based on, but really funny characters in all of them. They're all the same characters in all the movies, but that's kind of her humor, and she's a really funny person. Additionally, I love how driven she is. I originally fell in love with her because of that. She is very driven. She wants what she wants. Sometimes I have to be a realist with her and hold her back from all of the things she wants and take her from, holy crap, I want all of these things, to holy crap, these are the things that I can have. But I think our personalities sometimes bounce a little bit, like we butt heads a bit, but I really love that she pushes me to be a better person as well. I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, I would not be as successful as I have been in my career, as I have been in fishing. She gives me the opportunity to chase this dream, to pursue this passion, to go fishing, even though that means that if I'm gone for a 12-hour day, that she's got to watch our son, entertain him all day, cook lunch, dinner, breakfast, so on, and be the champion of the household. Like, she is the queen of the house, no question. And I couldn't be here without her. Ooh, I like this one. What's the fish that you want to catch most? There's a couple of fish that I've got on my mind, actually. First one right now, a double-digit largemouth. I have been on the pursuit of giant bass for past couple of years. My PB, this one right here, 7.15 on the Bubba scale. I want to say it was 8 because the Bubba scale is always off by about 2 ounces. I'll give you 7.15 though. I'd love to catch a double digit. I'd love to do it here in Arkansas. I know that they have them. I'd also love to catch a couple of really interesting fish on a fly rod. The muskie is one of them. I'd finally like to get my payback for my tens of thousands of casts that I've made now on a fly rod. I'd love to catch a muskie on a fly. An Arctic char is a huge one for me. I'd love to go to Iceland and catch an Arctic char. Steelhead. I'd love to catch a wild steelhead in the PNW. I just love that culture of steelheading. I think it's really cool that people absolutely commit their lives to that fish specifically, not just catching them, but conserving the places that they're in, really advocating for things like dam removals or protecting the habitat that they're in. I really have a lot of respect for steel headers and the fish itself. Those are a couple of the fish that I'd really like to catch, and my list is way longer than that, though. Oh boy. I hope she hears this. If it's not fishing, what is your favorite thing to do on a Saturday morning? I absolutely love spending time with my family, especially outdoors. We ride bikes a lot together. I love to take my kid out on my mountain bike. We have a little, if you've ever heard of it, it's called Kids Ride Shotgun. It's a little seat that goes on the top tube of your bike. And I can hit this guy's been doing this since he was about a year old, hitting blues and black mountain bike trails together and showing my wife how to ride mountain bikes. That's not her biggest strong suit, but she's getting better. She, I think, maybe enjoys it. She's never had a lot of interest in fishing, and I think it's because I'm probably so serious about it, and I have trouble getting away from that seriousness. I'm trying to work on that with taking my son out, giving them the patience that is needed for teaching someone else, but I struggle with that for sure. I'll be totally honest. But I love being outside with my family. I also love just laying in bed with our toddler and my wife and the dog, watching TV in the morning. Absolutely love just breakfast in bed, coffee, chilling, watching a TV show or a movie that we all like, whether it be right now, my kid's obsession is Paw Patrol. I personally love Bluey. Fun fact, love Bluey. The lessons that are in Bluey. That whole family is super cool. Oh, man. This is a weird one. What's your favorite sock to poop in? Funny story. Tournament fishing, for some reason, I get really, really nervous. Not for some reason, but I used to get really nervous. And I would have to poop basically 5 minutes after tournament takeoff, almost every single time, without a doubt. It doesn't happen anymore, but multiple times now, I have had to use my sock to wipe my butt. I now only carry and always carry dude wipes in my boat because I don't want that to ever happen again. But that's it. There's no favorite sock to poop in, wife. I now have dude wipes. This is a fun one. What do you think is the biggest misconception normal people have about anglers? So, biggest misconception of non-anglers about anglers. I think there's a couple things. I think that most people think that you just go out there to catch fish, number one. For me, fishing is meditation. Fishing is a way to reset. Fishing is a way to connect with nature. And I personally just love the process, especially tournament fishing. I can just think of the process now as multiple weeks before. If it's a huge tournament, I am practicing, using the information to gather a idea of what my game plan is going to be, thinking about how I'm going to target these fish, what I'm going to use to target them, going to the tackle shop, getting new baits, really honing my craft. It is so much bigger than just catching a fish. And I think people think you're just going out there, sitting on the bank, casting out there, and you catch a fish and then you kill it. That's the other thing for me. I think a lot of people think fishing is just this catch, kill, eat hobby. Sure, there might be a lot of people that fish just for consumption, but I'd say the majority of people, I don't know the stats or the data, but the majority of people are fishing as a hobby, as a way to pass time, as a way to enjoy the outdoors, nature, so on. And I think the last thing is that fishermen don't protect what they recreate in. It's pretty proven data. I don't have the exact numbers, but hunters and anglers are the ones that support conservation, nature, the places that they recreate in more than anyone. Whenever you buy anything in the fishing industry, whether it's a fishing rod, a reel, a bait, there is a tax that's put on those companies that goes to funding that supports conservation. Every time you buy a fishing license, that supports conservation. A lot of people like myself advocate for conservation. I use my platform, you might not see it all the time, but to support conservation, to support healthy habits for fishing, to support fish health, so on and so forth. I think that's a huge misconception of people that think fishing is just you kill the fish and you don't give anything back. Ooh. Fuck, marry, kill. A muskie, a largemouth bass, and a tilapia. Easiest one for me is kill the tilapia. I think tilapia are disgusting. Fuck a muskie. Maybe like a one night stand with a muskie. I'd love to finally catch one, and just one time. Once I can cross that off the bucket list, I may never target a muskie again. And marry a largemouth bass. Love the LMB. Love how I can target them in so many different ways, and I love that they basically live everywhere. I think the only state I've heard that might not have them in the U.S. is Alaska, but I think recently they actually found bass in Alaska. So the fact that I can catch them basically everywhere in this country is wild, and all across the world, really. Oh no. Oh no. Where do we keep the scissors? I don't know which scissors she's talking about, but we do have this like array of knives, like where you put all your knives in the sheath things. It's not a block, but it's like this plastic thing. There are scissors in there, so I don't know if she's trying to get me with this one, but there are scissors typically in there. I also have scissors in the boat, so I think she's trying to burn me with that question, but I've got scissors out here. Pretty sure there's scissors in my desk drawer. I know there's scissors in the kitchen in that little knife block. Nice try. Oh, fun. Who is your dream podcast guest? I've told everyone that I can tell this in person since before the idea started. This podcast has been a couple of different things until I finally landed on Fishing for a Living. My dream podcast guest is Billy Strings. Billy is someone that I think is an incredible musician. I got to see Billy back in 2018 in a little bar in San Diego called the Soda Bar. I want to say it might have been like a 300 person show, like maybe. It's this little, like, feels like you're in a basement. And I've been listening to him before then, like watching Dust in a Baggie on YouTube for the first time was this just enlightening moment. It's like, holy shit, I didn't even know someone could play a guitar like that. I like Billy a lot. I've seen him quite a few times all over the place. And he's a fisherman. I've tried to get everyone to listen to the Mike Iaconelli podcast with Billy on it. Mike actually sold his Bass Cat, I want to say it was last year, to Billy. So Billy's a big fishing guy. He's got a couple of fishing specific songs. And I'd love to have Billy Strings on this podcast. If you're listening, Billy, you're on the list. I'll take you fishing. We'll go have a badass meal. We'll record a podcast. I'll make it worth your while. Let's freaking do it. Like, that is my North Star of podcast guests for Fishing for a Living. And I think the interesting part of why I think he fits the mold for Fishing for a Living is he chased his dream, chased his passion. The dude, slept on couches. He's been through struggles to chase his dream, and now he's one of the best bluegrass artists, or whatever you want to call his genre, in the country, maybe in the world. He's world renowned. He's a fisherman. and he's built this life around his dream. And that's really more of what fishing for a living is about. Fishing is more of just like a metaphor for doing your passion for a living, chasing your passion, chasing a dream for a living. So I think Billy fits that mold perfectly. And that's it. That's the lightning round. Questions for my wife. That's pretty fun. Hopefully, you guys get a little more personality from me out of that. I actually kind of enjoyed answering those questions because sometimes those are things that you don't even know about yourself or things that people may never hear otherwise. Had to answer those on the spot. Like I mentioned, I had not seen those questions before, but they were pretty easy for me to answer. Maybe next time we'll give people a little harder questions to answer on the spot. And so I left Smith Optics, something I thought I may never do when I started there. And it was kind of tough. I had to really evaluate how I looked at work, how I looked at my career. Really had to be super introspective because the reason that I left was because I don't think that I interviewed the company as much as they interviewed me. And that's a huge tip that I can give to anybody. If you are in marketing, if you are in, I don't know, laying concrete, if you are a financial analyst, anything, whatever, if you're going to a new job, make sure that you are not only the interviewee, but the interviewer. You need to know that this company that you're about to spend 40 plus hours a week at is going to match who you are as a person, or I can tell you for a damn fact that if they don't align to who you are and they treat you like crap, or your morals don't align with how theirs do, if they don't stand for things that you stand for, you will get burnt out. You will have some negative connotation towards the company. You will want to leave eventually. So that's a huge tip that I would give to anyone is if you're about to go work for someone new, make sure that you are also the interviewer, not just the interviewee. So after that, I decided outdoor industry. I've got, almost 6 years in the outdoor industry now. How can I expand my career? How can I really get the full gambit? And next step, my thought was I want to be in a director or a VP level. As I had left Smith, I was getting into the senior manager level, which really awesome career that I had now, making really good money. But I wanted to expand my portfolio, my mindset, my experience. So said, what industries are not affected by downturns in markets? What does someone always need? What is also something that I can connect the dots of a passion or something that I really like? And that came to me as CPG, consumer packaged goods. I'm a big foodie. I love great beer. I love good whiskey. I like, eating well. I honestly like going to the grocery store and just literally looking at the aisles of food and selecting things based off packaging, cool branding. I love great products. Great product stories are something that I really value highly. And CPG is one of those things that provides a product. Consumer packaged goods are things that people will always need. I also love coffee. So I actually went to work for a coffee company, Ely Cafe. It's a 92, I'd say this year, I would guess, 92-year-old coffee company, the inventor of the original automatic espresso machine. And when you think of espresso culture, they are probably top of mind for most people. And my role there was, once again, really bringing them to be more of a relevant company in the U.S. market. being that they were Italian, they had a lot of Italianity. They really perceived themselves as an Italian forward brand, but that type of marketing doesn't always work in the US. So my task was to really blend the lines of speaking directly to the American consumer, holding our brand values, and making the brand just more relevant to a broader audience in the United States. So I managed all of our media buying, our social media. We had never had social media in the US specific market. I got the opportunity to start social channels from scratch. Ely US was my baby on Instagram. I got to work with influencers of all sizes, ages, so on. I owned that budget from a social perspective, from an influencer perspective, and I got to do some really, really cool things. I spent about 2.5 years there, was able to get a lot of things done, won multiple awards actually while I was there for innovation, for, I forget the other one. I won 2 years in a row, 2 different awards. And it was a really valuable experience for me. But all the while, all throughout that, my fishing obsession continued to just skyrocket, grow and grow and grow. I'd moved to this new area, Richmond, Virginia. Our house in Richmond is about 3 blocks or 4 blocks away from the James River. And when we first moved there, I realized there was a fish that I really wanted to catch. That was the muskie. So the first boat that I had bought when we moved there, I'd sold all my kayaks before we left California. I had enough money to kind of do a little swap. Was a 1442 Alumacraft, I guess you could say flat bottom John boat, with a 2518 Yamaha 2-stroke jet on it. And for about 12 months after, I guess it was probably only about 6, spent 2 seasons, so a winter to late spring and then another fall to spring, or something around those lines. About 2 seasons solely focused on muskie, a little smallmouth in the middle of it, but fishing the upper James River, the New River, took a trip to the French Broad River down in North Carolina just to catch the fish of 1,000 casts on a fly rod. I want to say I clocked about 20 to 25 days on the water. In total, I did count this, I had 23 followers, 23 muskie follows on a fly rod. I hooked 1 fish, and that fish came off in the net. That was almost a year of my life, and a lot of folks that know me well, the guys from Current Culture Fly Shop, they know this story better than anyone. I was way too obsessed. I got burnt out on muskie, and I decided, you know what, it's time to hang up the hat. Maybe I'll catch this fish one day, but overdoing it is not going to work, I don't think. So after the small boat, jet boat endeavor, I decided I was starting to get into bassing again. I was taking my boat out on the lower James. I was going to Chesden, which is not too far from Richmond, going up to the Potomac, and that was in my little jet boat. And it just wasn't suited for bass fishing. And I knew, let me get this freaking muskie obsession out of my head. Let me get something that's a little more doable, which was the bass, the largemouth bass. And so I went from that boat to the boat I'm sitting in now, the Triton 18TX, with a 115 Suzuki on the back of it. Came with a Fortrex on the front. I added lithium batteries, so I got Ionics running the Fortrex 24 volt. And now I have a Pro Guide battery running my 2 graphs. I've got a 9-inch Garmin at the dash. I've got a 12 at the front with the LVS 34 live scope. So I kind of kitted this boat out so that it could be a tournament boat of sorts. It's not the fastest. It's not the best. It's not the best for big water. but it does the job. I mean, it'll go wide open throttle on a good day, 42, cruises at about 34, 35, and it gets the job done. And I've taken this boat all over the place, from up in Maryland, Pennsylvania, over to, we're down to Florida, in between in South Carolina, Lake Murray. I fished a BFL on Hartwell in this thing. That was probably the scariest BFL I've ever fished. I was a boater for the first time. Wind was 35 miles an hour going out of Green Pond Landing, 95 boats. Waves were probably 2 to 4 feet at times. Sketchy in this boat. And can guarantee you I was the smallest boat in that field. And now this boat's in Arkansas. We're in Arkansas. So I've taken this thing all over the place, and it's gotten the job done. And regardless of wanting a newer, bigger, better boat, right now it's maybe not in the cards, but very grateful to have this thing. And now fast forward to my obsession of bass tournament fishing. That's kind of where I am today. I still love to fly fish. If I have the opportunity to go offshore and target, marlin, sailfish, billfish of any kind, dolphin, back in the Keys, off the coast, anywhere, I don't care. I am going to do it. I love targeting redfish in shallow water with a fly rod. I love targeting snook, still one of my top tier fish that I absolutely am in love with. I still love fishing for trout on a fly rod. That's not something I'll do with conventional gear probably ever. I love all kinds of fishing. I always call myself rod agnostic. I love the process. I love the journey. Fishing to me is just a bonus. This obsession, this passion, this purpose of mine, it is about the process. It is about how it makes me feel mentally, how positive I am when I'm on the water, how good I feel, how refreshed I feel after being out there, minus when I have sore back or so on. But I'm always grateful for every day that I get to spend on the water. And I'm so grateful for the rods that I have, the gear that I have, the boat that I have, the opportunities that I have. That's just me as a human. I have learned over time that to feel better as a person, I've got to be grateful for what I have and not be concerned about what I don't have. I can work towards what I don't have, but I can also be super stoked on what I do have. So fast forward to about 3 months ago, my wife works for a little company called Walmart, and they got the return to office call. For the most part, employee had to come to the home office here in Arkansas, and we decided, you know what, let's give it a shot. For me, that was a sign. I took that sign as I have always had an idea. I'm a huge ideas guy. It's actually gotten me in trouble at work in my career because sometimes I have an issue with focusing on one thing because I just come up with an idea and I want to execute. When it comes to big business, that's not always easy because they have KPIs, they have goals, they have revenue targets, and sometimes you got to stay the track. And that kind of frustrated me sometimes. I wanted to be nimble. I wanted to try things. I wanted to test things. And I wanted to create something that was my own. And a lot of the ideas that I've had in the past while in my career, I've been able to execute, but at the end of the day, they've never been mine. And I loved working in the outdoor industry. I loved connecting my passion with my career endeavors. But I finally said, you know what? Now is a better time than ever. I am not going to have this opportunity ever again if I don't do it right now. And as we were moving, I decided that I wanted to take on this journey full time, chase my dream. I had a career, 10 years long, a decade long career in marketing, building other brands. I had saved up a good cushion of money I built a plan, a strategy beforehand of what I needed to do to hit these marks to get to a place where I could make this work, make this dream a reality, turn fishing into a living, blending the lines of my career endeavors, the things that I've learned over time, the tools that I've sharpened in my file cabinet, my personal file cabinet, whether that's social media, whether that's content creation, digital media, working with advertisers, selling in advertisers, building relationships, building brand strategies. Those are all things that I have personally done. So I said, again, no better time than now. If I don't do this now, because again, little backstory, we have another child on the way. I have a 3-year-old at this point in time in my life, another one coming. My wife has a job right now. This opportunity is not going to come to me again. And another small, short backstory, I have been working on my mental health for years now. I have taken on a challenge now. It is the month of November. I am raising funds for a nonprofit called Movember, and I am raising awareness for men's mental health and suicide prevention because that is something that has always been incredibly important to me. And I think that if I didn't do this work on myself, being more confident, getting rid of imposter syndrome, because I had dealt with that for a long time. I always thought, why would these people hire me to do something so important? Why would they give me this budget to manage? Why would they let me execute these crazy ideas that I have? And I finally realized it's because I know what the hell I'm doing. And I matched that with my personal goal of creating something for myself. And I flipped the script, finally. For so long and multiple times of building the Kurrent, what it had originally started as is essentially a bank of photography on Instagram. Here's a couple of photos that I've taken in the past, a couple that I'm really proud of fishing, of San Francisco, of my travels on boats, of surfing, of skateboarding, so on and so forth. I've taken a ton of photos, and originally the Kurrent was something where I was able to just show my photography work that I really enjoyed doing. In 2020, I thought that I was going to create my own agency. I called it the Kurrent Digital, and I didn't have what it took at that time to build the relationships, to sell in brands, to work with me. And I don't think I was mature enough, and I didn't believe in myself enough. And now, fast forward to 3 months ago, I'm in this space where I was able to flip the script of, instead of what are all the reasons that I can't do this, or what are all the reasons that I shouldn't do this? And instead of that, my mindset was, what are all the reasons that I shouldn't do that? Like, why would I not do this? What if I succeed? Like, what happens? This is going to be amazing, incredible. I get to chase this dream, build this brand that I've always dreamed of. Instead of being scared, instead of looking at the negative, instead of having all of these concerns of, these risks that huge businesses take, of people that take these risks. Every brand typically is going to start with one person that took a risk, that made a decision to go all in on themselves, on their idea. And I knew that with my experience and my passion, and finally really just finding this purpose, that it was time. So here we are today. The Kurrent, I've put my heart and soul into this dream of making a business out of my passion, connecting the dots between fishing and my source of income. And it has been the most rewarding journey of my life. and it's only about 90 days in so far. I am looking to, at the end of the day, build a brand that inspires people to chase their dreams, inspires people to fish more and work less, just like this hat says that you can get on the currentsupply.com, to believe in yourself instead of talk negatively about yourself of why you can't do something, and instead say why you can do something. I want to be that guiding light for not only myself, but for others around me, and inspire people to chase their dreams. And a lot of what this brand that I'm building, the Kurrent, and the brands within it, whether it's this podcast, Fishing for a Living, or my merch brand or my apparel and gear brand, the Kurrent Supply, like all of what I'm building are things that remind you of why you should believe in yourself, why you should go fishing more and work a little bit less, why you should not just think about a dream, you should execute a dream or try something new or do something you've always wanted to, and really push yourself into your passion. And that's where we are today. We're building the Kurrent. We're building the brands underneath the Kurrent. And when I say we, I'm talking about myself. Like, this is a me thing right now. But one of these days, and I'm going to grind until the wheels fall off and make this thing work, through marketing consulting, working with other brands, using my knowledge, my skill set to help them grow from a freelance capacity, sharing my knowledge for money, essentially being a freelance marketer or a consultant. I want to work with brands and partners that I believe in. We already have a few that we're working with. I want to work with creators and help other people do the same thing that I have done, make a living out of being a creator, building your own brand, or whatever it is you want to do. I want to be that person that can help others chase their dreams. I have an arm of the business that is through ad revenue, through affiliate marketing, and now I have my own brand, the Kurrent Supply. So a couple of different ways that I plan to make money right there. And, a lot of what this is about is trying things. I know that it's not going to be an overnight success, and I'm here for the long haul. I've had a lot of setbacks already. I know I'm not going to be in this positive flow state for forever. And I'd call flow state when you really find that purpose and you wake up every morning just ready to rock and roll. You're not, just pissed off in the morning. You're not angry at your family. You're not just on edge all the time. You're not burnt out. You're so stoked to do something. You're so driven. And that's how I feel every day right now. I know there are going to be tough times. I'm actually recording this podcast on the day it's going to launch. I had planned to launch this earlier, but things happened and it's whatever. I'm still getting this done. I'm still committed to making it happen. This episode is going to be launching on November 5th, Wednesday at 5 p.m. Central Time, when everyone hopefully is getting out of work or is already out of work. I want you all to clock into the dream by watching this, get inspired, really feel like your dream is possible. And that's kind of where I'm taking the Kurrent. And like I mentioned, I know it's not going to be an overnight success. I know I got to put in the work. I know it's going to be tough. I know there are going to be really hard times. Like right now, like I mentioned, I'm recording this day of, and this is kind of weird, gross, sucks. I just found out last night I have shingles. I'm doing a challenge where I have to fish every day, post a video every day, post a podcast episode every day, post on social media every day, raise $1,000 in the month of November for my Movember fundraiser. I've got to sell merch, apparel, gear on the currentsupply.com, just like this hat, just like this coffee mug, fish more, work less. All while I'm sick. I do not feel great right now. My back hurts. Got a damn rash on my back. My neck hurts. My head hurts. But I know that this little moment in time I'm not going to let it define me. And again, back to the work that I've been doing on myself is just being positive, knowing that hard times make tough people or tough times make tough people, and knowing that I've literally got one life. That if I don't do this today, if I don't do it tomorrow, if I don't do it for the rest of my life, I'm going to be creating someone else's dream for the rest of my life. So this dream, I was able to start executing it years and years ago. This is not something that I just came up with overnight, this Fishing for a Living podcast, or building the Kurrent, or building a brand, or chasing something that aligns my absolute biggest passion, obsession, addiction of fishing with building a living around it. This is not an overnight thought, not an overnight idea. And I don't recommend that anyone just comes up with an idea one day and the next day that they quit their job. Anything worth doing is going to be really freaking hard. And I went into this knowing that for a fact, that this was going to be tough, but it was going to be rewarding. I was going to feel fulfilled. I was going to work harder than I ever have before, and I can guarantee you that I'm working more hours than I've ever worked in my life. I'm on day 5 today of my Movember challenge, which is, again, I'm raising funds. I'm raising awareness for men's mental health, for suicide prevention, posting a full-length YouTube video every day, a short podcast, posting on social, really talking about men's mental health, how we can be better as men, how we can break this stigma of not talking about our feelings, of opening up, of avoiding suicide, of sharing your thoughts and your feelings with people around you and not bottling things up. This has been super hard, so much so that I was literally diagnosed with freaking shingles yesterday. Like, this is stressful. It's a lot of work. But the thing that I absolutely know in my heart of hearts is that every single second is worth it, because I'm building something for myself. This is something I've always wanted to do. I might fall flat on my face, but I am not going to look back in 50 years and say, holy shit, I had the opportunity and I didn't do it. And that's what drives me every single day, is that I know that I am not going to wake up on my deathbed, if I'm about to die, and think back and say, I had this dream and I didn't try it. I didn't execute. I didn't even take the damn risk. And I hope that everyone listening knows that. I know you know that you have one life, but know that you are good enough and your ideas are not too crazy. Like, sure, within limit. But I've been asked by a lot of people, like, why do you think you could turn fishing into a living? Why do you think that you can do it better than other people that have not been successful doing it? Why do you think that, you were made for this? Well, because I believe in myself. It's kind of simple, honestly. I wake up every morning feeling like I am doing exactly what I was meant to do. And I don't want to sit up here on this pedestal and be like, some David Goggins or Gary Vee, like preaching to the choir, preaching to you. Like, I am living proof that anyone can do this. If you build a plan, if you believe in yourself, if you wake up every day knowing that you are doing what you enjoy doing, if you know that you're not going to quit, if you know that this is what you were meant to do, and that's it. This journey has had its tough times. It's had its beautiful, great times, and I'm going to continue chasing it. And that's what Fishing for a Living is all about. We're telling the stories of people that have taken risk, have chased their passion, have turned it into a living, or are in the process of turning it into a living, like I am doing right now. We've already shot 5 episodes. Folks like Drew Wilson, Drooler on Instagram. Drew is a quote-unquote lowbrow artist. He makes some really badass fish art. He actually lives only 2 hours away from me. We got out on the river, the river, got some fishing in, shot a podcast. That episode's coming up. I've shot with Simone Valencia, a fishing guide, a fly fishing guide, and previous fly shop owner, and really just amazing human. He's a dear friend of mine. We have shot with Bailey Eichbrett, who is the founder of the Serious Angler Podcast Network, now a full-time creator as of this year. He's taken a path similar to what I have taken, but he has been super successful doing it. The guy has got a ton of insight. So those are a couple of the podcasts that are upcoming. We've got a lot in store for this podcast specifically, but with my journey as well. So I really hope that y'all enjoyed this, enjoyed hearing a little bit more about me, and will continue to follow along, whether it's on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. This podcast, you'll check out thecurrentsupply.com. You'll support the fundraisers and the things that mean a lot to me, the things that I talk about, the things that I recommend, because that's what this whole journey is about, is inspiring other people, but supporting those that support you. And anyone that's part of my community, anyone that's part of this journey with me, y'all are family. Like, actually, y'all are the people that show up. I mean, it's crazy. Like, I've met so many people throughout my life in person that don't engage with this podcast, with my brand, anything that I do. They don't even touch it. But you guys, y'all are the ones that show up every day, make me feel like there is a chance, like I can make this happen. Y'all have bought the merch from thecurrentsupply.com. Y'all show up in the comments. Y'all show up in my DMs. Y'all give me support. You believe in me. And it's wild to know that people that I have never met in my life are the ones that want me to win more than the ones that I talk to every other day. Like, it's crazy. So can't express my gratitude enough for you guys, for everything that I have, for this idea, me being able to execute, for my wife, my family, my friends, my passion, my purpose, for fishing, for what fishing has done for me. I'm so grateful every day to have this life, and I have to pinch myself so often. And yeah, this is what fishing for a living is about. And I really hope y'all will stay tuned. Y'all will continue following along with the journey. The Movember challenge is something I'd love for y'all to tap into, tune into. Take a look at thecurrentsupply.com if you don't mind. Follow along on all the platforms. Everything is The Kurrent, TheKurrent. And this show will continue on every Wednesday, 5 p.m. After you clock out, clock in, follow the dream, chase your own dream. And y'all, thanks for watching. Stay in the current.